The prequels, the animated shows, and all of the Mandoverse has been playing with the idea of clones and the Force. But why now, and what will it have to do with Ahsoka? And what is this around an R-rated Star Wars movie? Welcome to Star Wars Uplink, your place for everything Star Wars gaming, the TV shows, and the movies. Let's jump in.
Just you reconsider playing that message for him.
There's some interesting stuff going around in terms of an R-rated Star Wars movie. And I want to have a few different discussions today. I want to talk about what that is, what was pitched, what we know of from two different sources that pitched R-rated Star Wars things. I want to also talk about what that would look like, and then if it would actually make sense in Star Wars. Like, does that actually fit the brand of Star Wars? Yeah. But let's kick this off with Rebel Moon. So, I don't know how you could have a more clearly inspired by Star Wars name than Rebel Moon. Now, what is Rebel Moon? Rebel Moon is a movie coming to Netflix, directed, produced, I think written by Zack Snyder. Apparently, it's an idea he's had for 20 years, but he originally pitched it to Star Wars when Disney bought Star Wars originally.
Oh, what?
And he had thought to basically say, we're going to make Seven Samurai in space, and it's going to take the heavy inspirations that George Lucas had around Westerns, but more specifically, Akira Kurosawa movies, and take that and just bring it even more apparent in his series.
Okay.
Or his movie.
And he thought Star Wars.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Star Wars is heavily inspired
hugely inspired
by those movies. But it became its own thing and its own flavor for sure.
Yeah.
Now, with him being like, no, it's going to be even more heavy. It's like, then why does it have to be Star Wars?
Well, that's what he's come to the decision of with making it his own thing now.
Okay.
So it's not Star Wars related at all anymore. It's his own movie, his own sci-fi epic, heavily inspired by Akira Kurosawa movies. And it's going to come out in December of this year, I believe. So that's what he ultimately did.
Okay.
Is he said, yeah, I pitched it to Star Wars, and this is what he said exactly. Quote, it was Seven Samurai in space, and a Star Wars movie was my original concept for it. The sale of Lucasfilm to Disney had just happened. There's that window where, who knows what's possible. I was like, I don't want any of your characters. I don't want to do anything with any known characters. I just want to do my own thing on the side. And originally I was like, it should be R-rated. And that was almost a non-starter, apparently, from his discussions.
R-rated.
Yeah.
That is bold. Especially when you're coming to Disney.
Hey, guys, I know you just spent $4 billion on Lucasfilm. How about we don't use any of the characters that you already plan on doing something? It won't be connected to anything else. It will just be in the Star Wars universe. And it's going to be R-rated. And no wonder there was no... discussions or movement past that.
Yeah. That's a bit too bold there, Zach.
And something very fascinating that goes alongside this is James Mangold was originally working on and wanted to create a Boba Fett movie that was rated R.
Oh.
Yes.
Right about the same time?
I don't think it would have been about the same time.
Okay.
But we are getting this information out at the same time. They're stepping up their promotion of the movie of Rebel Moon. And a lot of interviews are coming out from it. But they're also doing the press tour for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So James Mangold has also been getting some interviews around there and talking about some different ideas he has for Star Wars, because obviously everyone wants to know, what's he doing with Star Wars?
I think it's one thing to jump into Star Wars and say, I'm going to do nothing with anything anyone's been using or doing with these characters, and I'm just going to make it R-rated. Like, I think it's one thing to say that, and then it's another thing to have a pretty in-depth character that we know and make it R-rated.
See, I think it makes a lot more sense for a Boba Fett movie to have been progressed further along than it was. And I think it makes a lot of sense for it to be rated R, considering what we know about Boba Fett and his ruthlessness in the galaxy.
I agree.
But what would that look like in Star Wars? So we know that it's been pitched a couple times. It's been denied 2 times that we know of at least. And I assume that the Game of Thrones directors would have done something similar or would have pushed that PG-13 rating a little bit further. But what would Star Wars R-rated be? I have one thought.
Yeah, go for it.
A Vader movie would be R-rated.
Okay,
Yeah.
why?
We saw the incredible hallway scene in Rogue One, and that was just brutal. Now just imagine an entire movie of that. There's no way that it would be anything but R with that amount of just chaos and destruction.
Okay, so you're just saying like violence is what would make it R-rated.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think there'd be like flashback scenes with Anakin and Padme.
Oh,
or anything.
I would hope not. Good gosh, no thank you.
We're going back to the beginning of the Skywalker saga, where it all began. That bed on Naboo.
Oh no. Yeah, I could see that.
I think that's the only
I could
way
see
that R in Star Wars works.
Okay.
We know in Andor we've seen the S word be shared in a Star Wars project. So we do know that they use swear words that aren't just poodoo and all of that kind of stuff, like Mandalorian would have you assume. So we do know that there is this more mature side of things with Star Wars. And Andor was supposed to be F the Empire instead of fight the Empire. So we do know that was originally going to happen. But that could have fit in a PG-13 TV 14 series very easily. TVPG? Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe this is the discussion that we should have next, is Star Wars, does it need to be R? Does that boundary need to be pushed?
Simple answer to that question, I would say, is no, Star Wars does not need to be R-rated. I don't think it necessarily fits the vibe of Star Wars. Star Wars has always been a children's movie series.
Yeah. Or at least
From
accessible
the beginning,
to it. Yeah.
It was pitched as a child sci-fi movie. Like that's what it was. It was an adventure flick. It was inspired by Flash Gordon, which was a children's television series that was around like sci-fi. So I don't think it really meshes well, but that's not going to stop fans from wanting it
Absolutely
to
not.
be that. And
also, it was rated that for the time, and now those fans are adults. So
So I think this is the problem with Star Wars across the board, is there are so many different generations of Star Wars fans. They're the ones that watched it in the 1970s when they first came out. There's the ones that watched it with the prequels when those came out. There's the ones that are watching it now with the sequel trilogy, and probably even more widely, those who got introduced to it through Mandalorian.
yes.
So you have this broad generational coverage of Star Wars that you can't necessarily have grown up with Star Wars and have Star Wars grown up with you, because there are so many other fans that are just getting started on this journey. And I think something like Andor is where we really see how Star Wars can be quote-unquote adult without being R-rated. We see all of the things that come with an adult TV show in Andor, but it's so well done that it fits from an accessibility standpoint. It fits from the idea of what Star Wars is, what Star Wars was inspired by, and what Star Wars will always be, which is a story of hope and that kind of coverage.
Yeah. I don't want to make the comparison to Marvel again.
It's hard not to.
I know, it is. And in a way, it's kind of telling. Like, I feel like Marvel kind of did it with Deadpool. So I feel like they kind of did that whole, like, let's get even a bigger audience sort of thing. Like, let's stretch that out and kind of play with edgier content.
But that's the only place that it has been.
Yeah.
There was a lot of discussion around Guardians of the Galaxy 3 dropping the first official F word in the MCU, but it was still rated PG-13.
Interesting. I just don't think it's necessary for Star Wars. I understand and I get it, especially for like a Boba Fett thing.
Yeah.
I don't know that it needs to happen though. Like I feel like it would just kind of ruin the...
It would take away that experience which so many fans have of watching it with their younger siblings, with their children, with their grandchildren, or even just friends. It's such a widely accessible series and a franchise that I don't think it necessarily works or fits to be R-rated.
Do you think it would fit if it wasn't like a TV show or movie? Like what if it was more of like a comic or something like that? Like would that work better? Or
Comics
do you just stay away?
Gone a little bit more graphic in terms of like the violence, but I don't think anything's really been like R-rated in Star Wars. It's pushing the PG-13, and I remember when I think it was Revenge of the Sith got the PG-13 rating. It was the first Star Wars movie to have gotten the PG-13 rating.
Ooh.
And that was a big deal at the time. Everyone was like, can I bring my kid to watch this? And now PG-13 is like the new PG.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that there's always going to be a discussion around Star Wars having this like what if moment of like what would this look like. What about you? Do you think R in Star Wars works very well?
I would probably say stay away from it, Star Wars. Don't do it. Yeah, I just don't think it calls for those themes. Like I don't think it calls for... I think if
it works if the story was just, it ends up happening, but I don't think it works if you're trying to make an R-rated thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like if the violence is there, I'd say okay.
Right. And it's really strictly to violence.
Yeah. I think that's the only way you can get to the R rating in Star Wars is just like a lot of violence.
It's really interesting just thinking about Star Wars and the violence that's in it because lightsabers are extremely clean.
Yeah.
Like you're not getting a lot of blood and gore. Yeah, no. It's really interesting. I think that plays into why it's always kind of been just a PG thing because we're getting these bolts of like even blasters. They're clean too.
It cauterizes the wound.
Exactly. Nothing is like gushing blood and gore and like nothing encourages that viewership sort of thing.
And the themes of Star Wars don't necessarily work well with an R rating, I feel. Like I said a Vader show or movie would be awesome to see R rated, but that doesn't fit the theme of Star Wars, which is hope and overcoming large evil and like overcoming challenges and adversity.
And you have to ask the question, do we need to see that? Do we need to see a character be evil like that, you know?
Yeah.
Like, do we need to see a Vader just go into town?
I think it'd be awesome to see.
I mean, it would be really interesting to see. But that's not the Vader that we end up coming to know and understand. And seeing more of that might just complicate things.
Yeah. But moving on from that, I think, Star Wars and art doesn't really work well together. But something that does work well together, at least what we've been seeing so far, maybe not well, but it's definitely there a lot of the time. And it's the idea of cloning in Star Wars. Cloning in Star Wars. I think it's funny. You have like the prequels where it just gets introduced big time. You've got the clone troopers. And then you get the original trilogy where clones aren't really there at all. Obviously, in the extended universe, they do play around with cloning and legends and that kind of stuff. But in terms of the movies, there's not anything there until we get to the sequels. And then we find out that Snoke was a clone and Palpatine was a clone and all of the things are clones. Except for the troopers, which are like found and taken from their families. And then in the Mandoverse, it like picks back up. And I'm always confused with the time span of the Mandoverse because it feels like it wants to be the like before the original trilogy, but it can't. So they're trying to pick it back up now. We've got the whole idea of Baby Yoda and like why he was found is because he was being experimented on in a way to find ways to clone Force abilities. Like that's the whole thing, and that's definitely something in Legends that we see a lot of is Palpatine exploring ways to clone and incorporate Force into his clones. Yeah. So that's something that we see a lot of, and then we get into Mandalorian, and we see Moff Gideon doing the same thing of trying to create his own clone army of himself and give himself the ability and the backup, and that's separate from what we see in terms of the sequels trilogy with the idea of clones and Palpatine.
And then we see more clones in Bad Batch.
Yeah.
It's like the whole topic of, is it season 3?
Yeah, I think
of this
so.
third season.
The future third season, I think, is going
Yes.
to be in Mount Tantus,
and-
which is the huge cloning facility.
Exactly. We are getting this whole discussion. And I kind of think that Bad Batch is answering more of the moral side of things and the discussions that are never had.
Well, it's
with
from the
everything
perspective
else.
of clones.
Exactly. No, but they seem to be talking more about it instead of just using it conveniently.
Yeah.
Like, and I really, really appreciate what Bad Batch is doing with clones because they're starting to ask, what are the repercussions of this?
Yeah.
And was this a good thing? And they're
Aging
asking,
clones.
Yeah. I mean, we get the first hints of clones, of course, with the prequel trilogy, and it's no one blinks an eye. Like everyone's just like, okay, cool, yeah,
we're gonna make
clone
these
this
clones
one
of this one
bounty
person.
hunter dude. Yeah, I'm sure he's got great moral standards. And
Make
like,
millions of him and also use them as cannon fodder.
Yeah. Like, okay, the Jedi Council didn't think twice about this. They weren't like, maybe this is like inhumane.
Is this wasting human life and potential? What if these, like, do these things have souls? They obviously have free will, so that makes them valid human beings. Does the fact of them being created in a factory change that?
Right.
Those are the questions that the Bad Batch is asking, and
why did it take this long for us to start asking those questions?
like, wait a second, the clones are what? Like,
Yeah. Do they have rights?
and that's the whole thing with as Palpatine ended the cloning facility, the destruction of Kamino's clone facility, and just the whole dissolving of the clone army. You have tons of these clone troopers that they don't have a purpose anymore. And there's tons of them. What is that actually going to affect? How's that going to change the galaxy?
And why has it been such a thing? Like,
it's like all of a sudden we're getting tons of clone stories now.
it's like all anyone's talking about in Star Wars, it seems like. Like, everything is bringing clones in.
I think it's to fill in the gaps to make it more believable that Palpatine would be returning. I feel like that's ultimately what we're seeing when we look at the clones is like, okay, yes, they're playing with these ideas. Yes, the clone troopers are a thing. Yes, someone like Moff Gideon is playing around with it, so it's more accessible than it was in the past. Yes, we're incorporating some of the things with the Bad Batch crew and what we learned with Clone Force 99 of, yes, you can clone specific things into these people.
Right.
To have different skill sets and have clones that fit certain purposes. What if we did that with a human, but only chose the best qualities of multiple humans to create a clone of one person? And that's what Palpatine was playing around with, that we assume, because, again, Rise of Skywalker doesn't give a whole lot of detail in terms of, like, the science of things and how that works. Why does it do this when it doesn't do that? Like,
Right.
I feel like that's why we're seeing a lot of clones. I feel like
Yeah.
the Mandoverse is playing around with this sandbox, but they know they have to build a castle at some point. Like, they're building all these little sculptures all around, but they know that they're going to have to get torn down because a castle is going to have to be built at some point.
Yeah. I don't really like that. Can I just say that? I'm frustrated that we have to go back and justify
The stupidity of Palpatine's back.
just the weirdness of them bringing Palpatine back. Like, why? That just felt like such a cheap way of getting
they had
a
the
bad
perfect
guy back.
person
you know?
in Snoke.
Yeah. Why didn't they do more with him? Honestly, if they just stuck with him, made him decent, made him actually a little fearsome,
It didn't die in the second movie.
and didn't die in the second movie, maybe that would have actually been interesting and maybe more.
Or maybe
of the
he did
cloning
die,
stuff
but
could
he
be.
came back to life because that's cloning. Instead
Right,
of, like,
because
Palpatine was just like, hey guys, Palpatine's here. Like,
Hey, I'm back. I've been back all along. Like, come on. I don't know. Honestly, I totally forget about Snoke all the time.
Yeah.
Because-
Which is a shame because I think he was so well acted by Andy Serkis.
Yeah, I think he could have been really, really good. He was weird looking and then, like, come on. Like, it would have been.
We thought he was a giant in the first one.
Right, yeah. No, I did too. For sure. I don't know. There was just so much potential with Snoke.
But we do find out that he is a clone, so they do incorporate some of the clones because Palpatine's making more of him for some reason.
And honestly, it would have been even more interesting if they did kill Snoke and then he came back better.
Yeah.
Because he was still like working on his formula.
Yeah.
And, like continuing
that would have been fascinating.
That would have been cool. That would have been way more interesting and way more character building.
And building of that universe of like, hey, we've got Snoke, he died. But we now found out that Snoke was a clone, and we see in Moff Gideon's space of like the different iterations of the clones. Like if we see what if we saw the ultimate Snoke, where he was this massive force and this massive like evil in the galaxy that's making himself better with each version.
He could have been this mad scientist, you know, like where he. Really, the true Snoke is actually behind the veil, creating more little Snokes to make sure that his lineage lasts. You know, like that would have been interesting.
And what does it mean for the Force if you can imbue it into anyone or this living, non-living thing of a clone?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean for the galaxy if you can have this ultimate control of this huge force, this massive power? And this weapon that they're trying to utilize to achieve their own goals.
The weapon being the giant planet gun.
I just mean the Force. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
The Force is a weapon. As much as it is a tool, it's a weapon as well.
I think it's definitely crafted through the dark side as a weapon. And that would have just been a really interesting discussion.
Well, it's like, okay, yeah, you can have a sledgehammer. Sledgehammer is made to crack rocks. That's its intended purpose. But as a tool, it can be utilized to crack skulls as well. Like there's levels of like if you give a tool and you have this tool, you know what it's supposed to be used for, but you go against its original use case. Like that's when you start playing around with the destructive forces. Like that's basically like you have the Force. Force is neither good nor evil. And dependent on how you utilize it, you go towards the dark side, or you can use it for good and go towards the light.
Yeah.
So that's why there isn't like really a gray Jedi. Because the Force is this thing. And if you start going and using the Force in an evil aspect, you go towards the dark side.
There could have been a really interesting discussion on the Force and trying to make it not necessarily physical, but like scientific, like trying to break it down and
instead
into
of,
like an element sort
but
of
not
thing.
like midichlorians.
Right, yeah.
Because they already tried that.
Yeah, so making the Force extremely scientific.
Something that can be distilled.
Right, but in the dark side way, you know? Because like I feel like the Jedi would be, they tend to lean more towards the natural side of things, and it just flows,
holistic
and it's
Force.
just, it is what it is sort of thing, very loosey-goosey. But what if there was a new bad guy? Forget Palpatine, let him rest, please. And
just let the dead die.
Yeah. And what if it was this extremely powerful distilling of the Force that made this power, that makes this, I don't know, it would have been just really interesting if you could have made this very ethereal force.
I think that was the strength of Snoke, and I think that's what they were trying to go towards, but ended up having to switch most of the way through. But let us know your thoughts on that. What do you think of the idea of clones being more in Star Wars, and do you think there should be an R-rated Star Wars? Let us know in the comments or contact at uplinkpodcast.com. You can listen to the show wherever you find podcasts. If you want to kick it off on YouTube and finish it somewhere else, you can definitely do so. We're wherever you find podcasts. And as always, hey, thanks for listening, and may the Force be with you.